Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to my sports YouTube channel, Seek David Sports, when I do sports content and interviews with athletes, uh, active and retired, and sports related people. And joining me for the first time, a Hall of Famer, Alicia Ashley, former world champion. And before we start this, let me remind you that my guest here is a woman, is a lady. So I suggest that you watch your comments, watch your words, and manage yourself with respect at all times, because if you do, you're going to be blocked. So let's start this now. So Alicia, welcome to my space. Welcome to my channel. Pleasure and an honor to have you here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me.
Uh, of course, thank you for accepting, and the pleasure is mine. So anyway, let's start a little bit talking about your beginnings, where you grew up, and how do you start with the sport of boxing?
Well, I'm Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica. I came to the US when I was 11, and my initial career was dance. My father's a dancer, and I grew up learning to dance from age 6. And that's what I was pursuing dance while my brothers were doing karate and martial arts. And I danced for about 12, 13 years before I got injured.
Wow.
And just to keep myself in shape, I got into martial arts and eventually kickboxing and then boxing.
Oh, okay. So you're originally from Jamaica, just like the Grace, like Mike McCollum and Glenn Johnson. Now, Road Warriors.
Yes.
Yeah, like Glenn Johnson, who was in my channel as well. So anyway, and how was it difficult to adapt to a new culture? Because now that we know that Jamaica is a country with its culture, and the United States is a different one with a different culture. So how hard it was like for you?
Uh, wasn't so hard, only because when you come as a child, you adapt faster. The one thing that was hard for me is the weather. It still is, which is why now I'm living in Florida. um, uh, Growing up as a kid, you would watch TV, you would see snow, and you wanted snow, but you didn't realize that it came with being cold. So that's the only thing for me. Another was my accent. I had a really strong Jamaican accent, and kids can be very mean. So that was only the other thing. But living in Brooklyn, there was a lot of Jamaicans, so I found my community while I was there.
Okay, yes, I saw that by on video that you had several kickboxing matches. So how do you got into first into kickboxing?
Well, kickboxing was an easy transition from karate. So I did karate after I got injured, and I'm I'm more of a performer than anything else, and that comes from dance. So I needed to continue performing, as I would say. Uh, and I just got into a lot of competitions in karate. And once I felt like I reached the top of those, I my brother was doing kickboxing competitions, and I just got into kickboxing. But my first kickboxing match, I got matched up with a boxer. And generally, in a kickboxing match, you just have to kick 8 times within that round, and then they could punch all they want to do. And once I got that boxer in front of me and they got past my legs, I didn't know what to do. So I ended up winning because I kept them on the outside. But after that, I said I had to get my hands better for kickboxing because I really had no interest in boxing. I didn't really grow up loving the sport of boxing. It's only because I needed to get my hands better that I got into boxing.
Okay, and And how many, like, do you remember, like, how many kickboxing matches you had, and if you managed
Yeah.
to fight for a kickboxing championship?
Yeah, I had 12 kickboxing fight, 13. I did 12 and 12 wins and one draw. I was a way better kickboxer than a boxer because I had the legs from dance. I had the flexibility. My kickboxing name was Crazy Legs.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was very dominant in that. I won uh, a small championship in kickboxing, and I could have gone further. I'd gotten called for Pride, for various kickboxing organizations, but once I kind of got into boxing, my focus kind of changed a little. But I actually continued as an amateur, competed in kickboxing and boxing at the same time. Chuck Norris had a World Combat League that I competed in as well.
Wow. Wow, very interesting. An amateur kickboxing that was like founded by Chuck Norris. And how was that experience for you?
It was wonderful. It is a team sport. So you would fight one round and then each person would fight. And then after all six of your teammates fought, you figure out who's ahead, who's not, and then you had to fight again. And then it was this team score. So if one person lost, then someone else in the team could have picked it up. My team was the LA Stars, and we were undefeated the our season.
Okay. So now let's talk about your amateur career in boxing. How many amateur fights you had?
I think I had 18, 16 wins, two losses. Both losses was to the same person, Ella Nunez. She was I considered a true boxer because coming from karate and kickboxing, my style, I was a boxer that in the fact that I moved around a lot, but transitioning from karate and kickboxing where your upper body is pulled back and your chin is high was really hard for me once I got into boxing to get into that boxing pose and keeping my upper body forward. So the twice I fought her in amateur competitions, um, club shows, and then I actually beat her in the Golden Gloves
Oh,
in the finals.
oh, okay. And now, since now we're talking as an amateur, would you have like to compete in an Olympic Games or a World Amateur Championship in that time, or how do you see it?
Well, when I got into boxing as an amateur, there were not a lot of competitions around. In
Oh,
fact, the first year I got into the New York Golden Gloves was the second year they accepted women.
oh,
And then the next year, they actually added women's nationals. So I won the first inaugural women's nationals as a featherweight. And I won that in 2 years in a row. So there were no women in. There wasn't even a twinkle of the eye of the women going to be in the Olympics at that time.
oh, right, right.
So I did two national competitions, and I did a first women's international competition when we USA against Canada, and I also won that. I had one opportunity to go to Greece. They had international tournament, but that year for some reason it got canceled, so I didn't get to do that before I turned pro.
Okay. Now let's go to your pro career, and let's say that you start with a couple of losses after you eventually started winning, and let's talk about, yeah, fight.
I'm gonna say actually I did. I did a win, a loss, a win, a loss, a win, and a loss, and then I started getting a set of wins. Because when I first started out, I really had no inclination, I'd say, to become a champion. That was not in my purview because we really didn't. There weren't really a lot of women fights. I am just a competitor and a performer. So I would just take fights anywhere. In fact, a couple of my fights that I took were way above my weight class. My weight class when I started was featherweight, and I fought lightweight. I fought higher than my weight classes a couple of times just to get fights. So it really wasn't for me a win or lose situation. It was just getting as much experience as possible because I was getting. In fact, when I first got into the sport, I was thinking more of staying in kickboxing
Oh,
than really doing boxing.
okay. Yes. You say it. You start win and win, lose, win, lose. And I want to talk
Mhm.
about one fight that you had in February of 2000 against Laura Serrano, the poet of the
Yes.
ring, who was a world champion. So, how do you remember that fight with Laura Serrano, and what do you think that happened there?
I actually love Laura.
Oh,
um, it's that was pretty early in my career. I think by my fourth fight, I was fighting for a title because as I said, there were not a lot of fights around. But actually, Laura Serrano fight was not a title. I think that was probably just an 8 rounder. She, I think, is a complete fighter. She can bang, she can box, and for me, it I learned a lot from her, from fighting with her, from boxing with her, because of all the things she was able to do. I came into boxing being more off that boxer, that mover. So I never sat down on my punches. I was never staying in one spot. And watching her and fighting with her, I learned so much from that loss and was able to, take that and go back to the drawing board and add more things to my, repertoire. So I really enjoyed that fight with her. I always go into fights um, as a learning process.
okay. And then after that, you had another fight with another world champion, which was Leila McCarter. So, how do you remember that fight with Leila McCarter?
Layla MacArthur, we fought in Vegas. She is more of, uh, she is a boxer and a fighter, but she's more of that fighter. I think we ended up with a draw, my only draw on my record. Um, I I also feel she was a tough fight, um, in the fact that she did stay more stationary. She wanted you to bang with her a little bit more, but she could also box. So I think what I learned from Laura Serrano, I was able to apply against Layla.
Okay. And now, then you keep, of course, you keep fighting. And I'm going to let's talk about some fight that you had with a female fighter from my homeland, Argentina, which is Marcela
Yes,
Acuña. So, how do you
yes.
remember those fights with Marcela Acuña, including those two wins that you had against her in her country, Argentina? How do you remember those fights with Acuña?
I remember when I first went, neither of my coaches were able to come with me.
Oh,
Um, my main coach, Hector Roca, he had a male fighter that he had to go with because as it is, women aren't getting any money, and the male fighters were the one that were paying his, putting money in his pocket. So he chose to go with that male fighter. And my brother, who used to be my coach, he was also competing in kickboxing. So he had a fight. So I had to actually bring a coach that I used to spar with his girl to Argentina with me. Um, so I was a little bit uncomfortable going down there to fight, not having the regular people in my corner. But you have to fight. um, I think I the first fight ended up being a split decision win on my part, and I actually was kind of shocked that it was a split decision because I felt like I boxed her pretty well. I was a lot more mobile, um, was in and out, and yeah, I was pretty surprised when when it was a split decision.
Okay. And how about the second one with Acuna? How do you remember that second fight?
Well, the second fight was much easier. I now knew her because I fought her a few months before. Um, I had Hector Roca in my corner, and um, it's funny because they thought that I would move a lot more than I did. I actually stayed more in the pocket fighting her the second time around. Um, but as I said, I knew how she would fight, but she didn't know how I would fight. They thought I would fight the same way that I did the first time. The first time I was just, I think because I wasn't completely trusting my corner, that I wouldn't listen to what he said. But now I had my head coach beside me and was able to listen to everything he said right then and there and process it and react right away. But this time I actually stayed in the pocket and fought.
Okay.
And that one was a unanimous decision. It was I felt that second time was relatively easy for me. The first time was much harder, but the second time was much more easy.
Okay. And then you had a trilogy years later, also in Argentina. What do you think happened in that third fight with Acuna?
A lot was happening with me at that time. A lot was happening with me. I came down for that fight, but generally in I was in a relationship at that time that the person was with me, and we got into a major fight before the fight, um, before the match, and it was pretty distracting. And that's one thing I want to say to a lot of people who are in relationships. You have to know that person has to understand what an athlete has to go through. It doesn't matter if it's a boxer, if it's a track and field, athletes on any level have to do so much training and have to focus on their competition that you don't need any type of distraction. And that has happened to me actually more than once. I learned the hard way that it affects how I fight.
Okay.
And I think that one was
Okay.
for her like a majority decision win. I feel that
Okay. Now,
maybe three of of my losses, 3 or 4 of my losses are like true losses, where I feel that person was so much better than I was. Laura Serrano being one, Chevelle Hallbeck being another. Um, um, Other ones, I think if you look at a lot of my more than at least half of my losses have been split decision losses, and I'm fighting in somebody else's hometown, mainly with maybe two judges being from that country. They're that promoters person. So I think a few of those fights I didn't really think of being real losses, but I think maybe four of my fights I do think is that person was way better than I was.
Okay, let's go up for a minute and let's talk about a fight that you had in Germany with Alicia Graf. If I,
Grab, yes.
so how do you remember? How do you remember that fight with Graf in Germany?
It was actually a lot of fun. Um, and that's the same thing. I'm going to fight in somebody else's hometown. They're that promoter. I was very surprised when it said split decision, and I thought, huh, here we go again. It's going to be another loss because I felt that I did really well. I actually knocked her down, and they didn't count it as a knockdown. And if you watch that knockdown, it's not a slip. They didn't count it as a knockdown. It was a few back and forth. I think my style of boxing was a little bit confusing for her. And again, a lot of the women that I end up fighting are mainly punchers as opposed to boxers. So when they get a style that doesn't really stand in front of them, it is a little off-putting or confusing to them. But I was very shocked that I won that one on a split decision as opposed to a full unanimous decision.
Okay, and not only that, just like you said, you went to someone else's country. And for example, you had a chance a little bit to know Argentina. You also had a chance to know Germany. So they were like different countries, different cultures for you. And how was that experience of having that chance to meet, to being in those countries, for you to having
That,
the chance to know them a little bit?
that's the one thing that I enjoyed. I really enjoyed traveling to other countries. Um, when I started boxing, I got into boxing as an amateur at age 28 and a pro at 32. So I never got a promoter because they felt that it would be a waste of their money putting any money behind me because I would probably retire in 2 or 3 years as the guys do because they start much earlier. But I was relatively young in boxing age because I wasn't getting the kind of damage that the boxers go through from starting at a very young age or a teenager. So because I didn't have a promoter, that's the reason I ended up going on the road. The majority of my first fights were all on the road. I don't think I fought in New York until maybe my 18th or 19th fight. So majority of my fights have been on the road. And winning in somebody's hometown means something. But I really enjoyed traveling. I enjoyed going to Argentina. The first time I didn't really socialize. The second time I went with Hector being there and speaking Spanish, he was able to navigate for us. And we, I think we went to a big cookout after the fight. The promoter had invited us to his ranch, and they had a big barbecue. So I really had a really nice time visiting, and that's something that I planned after quite a few fights. I made sure that I had extra days in the country after the fight because most of the times you go in, you fight, you leave. And then I would ask the promoters to give me 2 extra days. I don't mind paying the hotel, but at least my airline, my flight would give me 2 extra days, and then I would get to see the country.
Oh, okay. So now let's talk about another fight. When you had a chance to fight for the super flyweight champion in North Korea against Myung Ok Ryu. So how do you
Yes.
remember that fight with Ryu in North Korea?
The fight itself is a little bit of a blur. The experience was very terrifying because it was, I think they're like 60th anniversary from um, our independence from Japan rule or something like that. And they were letting people into the country. And they just happened to let Americans into the country at that time. Um, I don't know what I got myself into. People kept saying, "You're going where? You're going to North Korea?" Oh no. And I'm like, okay, whatever. It's an experience it's something that I can say that I've been to that other Americans can't say they've been to. But when we flew, we had to fly to the promoter was out of South Korea.
Oh,
We flew into South Korea. We had to fly to China to go to North Korea. So then and there, that's a lot of travel. We got into North Korea immediately. They took our passports. Then a handler took that, the passport's phone. And then that was where it became scary because I have no communication. And everywhere you went, you had to go with a handler. For me, I didn't really, other than the first day when we got there and we went to a celebration that they had commemorating that the year of independence. I went nowhere. The rest of my crew or the rest of the coaches and stuff, they went sightseeing, but I stayed in the hotel because I'm there to fight, and traveling, especially coming across the world, they're 12 hours ahead. My body has to get used to that time, the changing time. I stayed in the hotel. I either slept or worked out. I did not enjoy the food. So it was just focusing on fighting. And it's really weird because at the weigh-ins, I meet my competitor, and at the fight, I was like, I don't think this is the same person. Either she gained 10 pounds or something, but I was just like, this does not look like the same person this cannot be the same person that I had at the weigh-ins. It was also, there was a Chinese referee, and anytime that I would start getting the better of her, he would break up the match.
oh,
Yes. Anytime we got in, he would break it up. And it was very annoying. And, she won with a unanimous decision, which I just went, okay, whatever. There's nothing I can do about that. There's no complaining. There's absolutely nothing. I'm just ready to go home. So, and the whole ride home, he would apologize. So it was set in what would happen. So that one, I just went, this is how it is. And I'm not complaining about it, especially not there.
okay. And now after that fight, let's go to another one that you had. It was with a fighter from Trinidad and Tobago, if I'm not mistaken, with Lisa Brown. So how do you remember that fight with Brown?
Lisa Brown was up in Connecticut. I think that was oh yeah, it's a later fight, maybe. Lisa Brown was also a split decision loss, and I think that was for her title. Um, I know that uh, I really felt that I won because when they called her name, she was extremely surprised. There was not a lot of confidence in when she thought she won when before they called her name. And Lisa Brown was a power puncher, and I think I was very mobile. The You know what? I had a very short hairstyle. Things that I learned as a female boxer. Always either have your hair braided or pulled back, because my short hairstyle would go up and down, and it would look like I get hit if you're moving your head back. um, and I watched that on television. That actually was live on a channel. I don't remember what, and it was covered by a sports channel. And I remember watching it and hearing them say what a robbery it was. So even the commentators watching was like, that was such a robbery. And that's how I felt. Not hearing them, because that was after that they just gave it to her. Because, of course, it is her promoter and her bout. And majority of the time they say you really have to, the only way to really win is to, stop someone. And I'm not that style of fighter.
Okay. Now let's go back to 2011, July of 2011, when you fought Christina Ruiz for that WBC World Super Bantamweight Championship. So how do you remember that fight with Ruiz when you became a world champion?
When I became a Ruiz, that was not my first world title that I won, but I think that it was a WBC title.
Yeah.
Ruiz. I think that was out. I think that was in New York. One of the few times I got to fight in New York. It was outdoors, and yeah, up in the Bronx. So it was outdoors. It was for a super bantamweight title. I think that entire experience was fantastic, because that's one of the first times, one of the few times that I had people that were there for me, that I was the hometown person. Christina Ruiz, I think she came from Texas. So she's one of the typical Mexican fighters. And I actually do well against Mexican fighters because they like to come forward. They keep coming. They push forward no matter what. And because I'm a boxer and I like to move around, they're coming forward, usually comes into the spot that I want them to be, so that I can throw punches and then move. So I think it was just that hit and move that whole time. It was I was on my toes the whole time. Yeah, it was and actually I think I was punching pretty hard that time because I hurt my knuckles. She had a really hard forehead.
Oh wow.
I think my knuckles were swollen for I couldn't punch for a few months. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. So I think for once I was actually hitting pretty hard.
Okay. And when you won the WBC World Super Bantamweight Championship, how do you feel in that night?
Well, I mean, the WBC is a big name. It's one of the premier titles. And once I actually started focusing on fighting, because or just putting myself into boxing, uh, then those started to become what I, desired to get that title. It's one of the few titles that I actually wanted to get. As with majority of the women first starting out, I was working full time in most of my fights. I was working full time, either training early in the morning or training later night, to get that boxing time. Probably early in the morning to get that boxing time in before I went to a full time job. Because as it was back then, you weren't earning any money. Most of my title fights, $5,000, $10,000. I think only when I fought in Mexico did I get $20,000, and that was a fight to get that money. But even that win against Ruiz, it's probably like $8,000 or $9,000. It's really relatively nothing.
Wow.
For all the training that women are doing and fighting for title fights. But I think I really enjoyed myself in that fight. She came forward. I was able to stick and move and came out of that, other than my knuckles hurting, without any big injuries.
Okay. And then after winning the championship, you had several defenses, including one in Panama against Chantal Martinez, world champion from Panama, if I'm not mistaken. And then in 2014, in September of 2014, you lost it in Mexico to Jackie Nava. So how do you remember that fight with Jackie Nava and what happened that night?
I knew after going to doing one defense in Mexico City against probably Villalobos that I had to go there early because their altitude is much higher than New York City. And when I fought Villalobos, my legs felt like it was going through quicksand. So when I went to fight Jackie Nava, who is a very tough and a fighter, I went maybe 2.5 weeks earlier to try to get acclimated to the change in altitude. I think I know when I went there again, a lot of things were going on in my life, and my coach and my husband got into a major argument, and he had to leave.
Oh,
because you can only focus on one thing at a time. I cannot focus on the relationship when I'm trying to focus on a major fight. But that wasn't really what annoyed me that time. The day before at the weigh-in, I was supposed to fight for the WBC and the WBA title. And I owned the WBC and she had the WBA. And when we went, they said that we were no longer going to fight for the WBA. Okay. But because I was fighting for the WBC and I'm the champion, I felt that as a champion, you're supposed to come in second, the ring. And they wanted her to come in second because Mexico in her hometown and all. And there was this major argument with my coach, Hector Roca, and the WBC and all of that as to who would be going in first. And we lost. So as a champion, they had me going to the ring first. So there was a lot of behind the scenes things that made it very annoying and distracting. And I think they also had open scoring. So after the fourth round, you would know where you were. And after the eighth round, you would know where you were. And then, right. And I know after, I think the fourth round, we were like, it was like a draw. Our scores were the same. And at the eighth round, they had her up maybe a round or two. And because of that, I changed the way I fought. I had to try to go in more, which became her fight. I had to stay there to try to knock her out. And that's not the type of fighter that I am because I'm a boxer. So I changed the way I fought in the last two rounds to try to win those last rounds. So I ended up, I think it was it might have been a majority decision. Yeah. So I felt like I changed the way I fought just because of a few things that happened a few hours before the fight.
Okay. And then the next year, the WBC Super Bantamweight title was vacant. The next year in 2015, and you won it again against Christina McMahon. So how do you
Hmm.
remember that fight with McMahon where you regained the World Super Bantamweight title?
Well, I mean, I kind of knew it was my title to begin with. um, so it was just like getting it back. I think Christina came from Ireland,
Oh,
or she's Irish. She might not come from Ireland. She might have. She might have came from Ireland, but she is Irish, and Irish fights just like Mexicans, which
oh,
works for me because she came forward. Um, I think she might have had what would she have in her corner? Maybe Holly Holm, I think, was in her corner.
wow.
Yeah, so they try to bring out the big names, which really doesn't bother me in any way. That's you. Sometimes people try to mentally work you over, and that really didn't bother me. Um, Her style of fighting was what I knew, and that wasn't anything surprising. So I think that one. I think that for me was a fun fight. And again, my hair was all over the place, but it didn't matter that time.
Okay. So, and then the next year you lost it to Fatuma Sarika from Kenya. And how do you remember that fight with Sarika and what happened in that night?
uh, the promotion. uh, the promotion was ridiculous. They came. It was supposed to be a. It was supposed to be a charity style event for Detroit. Uh, they had a bad water situation, and they came and they spoke highly about what this would be, and the promoter brought us in, put us up at like a motel, like a
Oh,
really rundown place. Really wasn't. We really had to pay for our own food, all of that. It was a very bad situation. And I know uh, I actually don't think I ever got paid for that. I think that whole situation was really messed up from the very beginning, and because of that, it wears on you. Even where the venue was just like a school or a school gymnasium. It was really shoddy to begin with, and um, and yeah, I really was not focused on fighting. And actually, I think I know in the last few years of my career, I was battling meniscus tears in my knee, which was also what stopped my dance career. So, in the last few years of my career, maybe in the last 4 years, I was not fighting at full capacity. And um, and that went there was one of the times where my knee was injured. I would end up getting cortisone shots in my knees or visco supplementation because I would have my knees would be swollen. Or I've had it drained a couple of times. When I fought in Panama, I had to have my knee drained. Um, but I also do not feel, because I don't really remember that fight, but I did not feel like I lost. Um, I just didn't feel like I was in the fight at all. So it wasn't that she was a better fighter. I just know that my focus was not in that fight.
Okay.
So I think that was like a split decision loss. It wasn't even, yeah. But
Okay.
as I said, there are just a few fights where I actually felt that person was a better fighter than I was, and that
Okay.
was not one of them.
Okay. And then in the last fight of your career, you fought Dina Torslund in Denmark for an interim super bantamweight championship. So how do you
Mhm.
remember that fight with Torslund? What happened there? In that.
Not when I was injured. Not
Oh,
when I was definitely injured. I really shouldn't have fought. um, uh, I went into that with two coaches that were not were at odds with each other. Um, but when I'm in the ring, I don't think about what's going on outside in the corner. Um, but I was injured in that one um, with my knee, and I actually should not have taken that fight. But I also didn't feel that even though it was a unanimous decision, I was in such good shape that by the 10th round, and she was huffing and puffing. I've always been a slower starter, and in that sense, I started off really slow. So by the 10th round, when I was still feeling okay, it was over. I felt if I had two more rounds, that's one of the first times I felt I would have really stopped someone. Even though I've stopped people before in fights. That one I really felt I was breaking her down, but it was just a little too late.
okay. And after that fight with Torslund in Denmark, you practically retired because you haven't
Hmm.
fought since. And so, tell me, how do you? Uh, I know that you got into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So how do you find out about it, and how do you feel when you got into the International Boxing Hall of Fame?
Um, I'm going to tell you, I was pretty surprised after I lost to Dina. In June, July, I got a call from someone in China. Actually, Jill Diamond for the WBC reached out to me and said that there was a there was a gym that was opening up in China, and they were looking for trainers. And if I wanted to go, for it would be just for a few months. And since I was contemplating retiring, um, I needed to totally change my environment, and I took that job, went there, and that's when I officially retired about 2 months later, because I was able to step away from the atmosphere that I had in boxing at Gleason's gym, which is a true boxing gym. I was training amateurs and a few professionals, Muay Thai fighters and stuff. And if I stayed, I knew I would not have retired. But because I left, I was able to separate myself and be able to know that my body's not healing and it's time to retire. And that's what happened. So I was there for about 3 years before I got my first letter to say that, or email to say that I was on the list to be inducted. And I didn't think I would be. So that first year, I did not get in, that I was on the list. And with the other women around it, on that, I was like, no way. And then the second year is when I got the call. I got the email again that I was on the list, and I felt again the way people are in boxing. Just a regular layman will go, look at her record. Why is she going into the Hall of Fame? And yet, the other people that are in boxing, the judges, the commentators, all of those, the reporters that really watch boxing, look at who I fought, as opposed to just looking at my record. And that's when they chose that, especially because I fought internationally. I've gone to so many countries, and a lot of the people that are on the panel making the choices are from other countries. They're not all American. And those are the ones that picked me. And I was ecstatic when I got that call. I was very surprised that I got in on that second year that I was on the ballot. But it's they're saying that that all the fights that I did, all the matches that I did against all of these titleists, all these world champions, meant something, because so even though my record is like 34-12, you look at the champions that I beat, where I've gone to fight them, winning in their hometown, tells you that what kind of fighter I was. So I was very happy to be inducted.
Yes, I can understand that. And when you look and someone looks at your career and record, sometimes I would like to ask, like, is there any fighter that you didn't fight, or somewhere that you didn't fight? Because we say you fought in Argentina, Denmark, Germany, North Korea, uh, Haiti, Mexico, Panama, I mean, China. You fought a lot of places. So, how do you feel? How has been that experience of being able to fight so many fighters, elite fighters, world champions, and able to travel to so many countries and different cultures? When you look back at your career, how do you feel about all that?
It's bittersweet. The one place that I didn't get to fight was my own home country in Jamaica, and that never happened. Even though we tried a few times to get it going, that never happened. So I would have loved to fought on my own country soil. But being able to travel the world and fight has been the highlight of my career. Um, I did not mind being that road warrior. And that's one thing I think that a lot of the fighters who are promoted, um, they only fight majority of the time in their city, in their hometown, and they get this feeling that they're a great fighter. Yes, because they beat that person, but you do have an unfair advantage when you fight in your own hometown. And if you travel or if you go somewhere else or if you go to a neutral city, even though you're the champion, if you go to a neutral city and you win, then it means something. Or if you go to someone else's hometown and beat them, it means a lot more to me. So I loved what happened with my career, win or lose, because all my losses are learned. I learned something from them. I learned if it's me that I wasn't on point that day, or if that person was better than me. If that person was better than me, then I learned something because I'm going to take what it is that I couldn't do in that sense and work on that. That's what my losses mean to me.
Okay, so tell me, let's talk about a little bit about the state of boxing today, the state of women's boxing. How do you, if you're watching the sport, still watching the sport, how do you see the state of boxing today?
I mean, it's more open. Women are earning more. I mean, like now that women got into the Olympics, there's a little bit more of being on television. It's still not as much. I think overall the boxing itself is not the same level that it used to be. Um, it used where everyone fought everyone. And now it's pick and choose. I I like the fact that um, even though I did not like him as a fighter, Jake Paul with his um, his page, the amount of people that follow him, he's able to give that highlight to the women. Signing more women. But even then, I think it got oversaturated with how many women that he signed, and I don't see that those women are fighting each other. So you have so many women that all have titles and they're fighting other people. They need to go back to this everything in boxing need to go back to how you had the top 10 and the champion would fight the number 1 or number 2 contender, not 20 on the bottom of the list. And overall, that's what the state of boxing is, not just female boxing. Female boxing, at least they're being highlighted a little bit more. They're able to get televised a little bit more. And that's something that wasn't happening when I was around. But overall, the state of boxing, I think, is lacking in that effect that the top people are not fighting each other.
Okay, I agree with the fact that women's boxing is televised. Is televised more. It's being viewed a lot more, and also we see that in women's boxing we have a lot of female fighters. Like I see that fighting more, having more unifying championships. More, we have more undisputed champions in women's boxing, like Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor. Amanda Serrano, among others. So we can say that the women's boxing have evolved a lot in the last years, in these the last decades, if we can agree to that. So how do you feel about the progress of women's boxing?
I mean, it has progressed. It has progressed. Just the fact that um, that they've opened up more weight classes for women in the Olympics. Um, that yes, they're having unification matches, but I still feel like you only know three or four names of women in boxing. The regular layperson will know Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, Clarissa Shields, maybe Michaela Meyer, but that's it, right? That's the thing that yeah. Back in the day, you only knew Holly Holm, you knew Layla Ali, the coal miner's daughter. You just there's the same thing. It's just now we know maybe two more than then. Then you knew one each cycle. So it is opened up a little bit, but still not as much as it should be.
Uh, okay. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back. When you start like watching, when you start doing boxing, when you start to box, was there any boxer, any fighter that you like to watch?
Um, my style was more Pernell Whitaker and Roy Jones Jr.
Okay, so those were like the fighters that you like to watch when you start doing boxing.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. And now that if you're still watching, is there any fighter, any boxer that you like to watch today?
Um, I don't watch fights as I used to. Um, Actually, back then I didn't watch a lot. I watched a lot of the lighter weight classes back then, um, but I was not a big proponent of boxing, of watching boxing. I got into boxing to get my hands better for kickboxing. And then once I got into boxing, for me, it was more of the competition, the strategy of the game. So I was never one that watched so many fights. And now that I'm out of the game, I still teach boxing and I train boxers, but I'm so out of the game. um, for me, getting my body back to a level from all those injuries that I had. I now am a yoga teacher, Pilates teacher, as
Oh,
opposed to doing so much about boxing. So I actually don't watch boxing that much, if at
oh,
all.
okay. So, okay. And how do you get that? How do you get into being like as a yoga instructor to teach yoga?
Well, I got into yoga because of all my injuries, and that was one of the things that was helpful. And once I started doing it a lot, I I figured I might as well get certified. And once that happened, I it was just a rabbit hole. But remember, I started out in dance. So I was a dancer for 15 years before I even got into boxing. So I'm kind of saying that it's full circle.
Okay, I can understand that. And so tell me, you also say like you train fighters, you're a boxing trainer, and how do you feel when you train fighters when you're like in some way you're transmitting your experience and knowledge to other fighters. How do you feel about that?
Well, I was always training fighters when I was fighting.
Oh,
Um, Once I started getting into focusing more on boxing, I the only way that I could stay in the gym was to start training fighters. So I worked at Gleason's gym for maybe half of the years that I was competing, and then went to China to teach boxing, but more uh, in gyms as opposed to a real boxing gym. And then when I moved back to the States 2 3 years ago, I started working into a regular boxing gym. So it's not, I train one professional fighter, which is Maureen Shea, and we used to train together in New York when I was a professional. Um, our coach, we had the same coach at that time. Um, Everybody else is just amateur or regular boxing classes. Um, I'm trying not to get sucked back in. Maureen sucked me back in, but otherwise, so I'm training her for her upcoming match. But otherwise, my focus is more on healing, I would say.
okay. Uh, so anyway, so your opinion, what do you think like it should happen so women's boxing can progress and evolve more? Like more support, more people watching it. What do you think?
I mean, I think along with the sport that, of course, if there's more media coverage, which means it's on television or televised more, whatever platform it's being televised on. Uh, I think I think overall, it's the matches are few and far between. Uh, the way women blew up in the UFC is because every match had a female fight on, even if it was on the undercard. There are so many fights going on, boxing matches going on, and still there are not women on the undercard. And that's one of the things you have to have. Uh, the only way that it'll get bigger, other than the one or two all female cards, it has to be seen on a regular basis. And if it's not, again, people will only know those one or two female names. Now that Katie Taylor is no longer fighting, Amanda Serrano wants, she'll soon retire as well. Who's next to take over? It's just going to be one person, only because you usually just see one major fight. So it has to be more in order for it to really build.
Okay. Well, we can end it here. So, Alicia, thank you for being in my channel. Thank you for accepting being in this space. And well, the best of luck. And it was a pleasure and an honor to have you here and talking to you.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure as well.
Okay, well, follow me for more content and more interviews with athletes and sports related people, including world champions like Alicia Ashley, who was the first Hall of Famer in my sports YouTube channel. So, bye, Ashley. Thank you. Okay.
All right. See ya. Bye.